There's moments in life where you have photographic memory. When JFK is shot with 63, the Challenger explosion, 9/11, various international negative incidents, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Bobby Kennedy, everything else. But on a positive side, I remember the moment I first heard this song. It was in 1980, spring of the year. I was driving in my dad's Ford truck. I hadn't learned how to drive yet. Our local AM station was saying something about the fact this is the next big hit from the Possum, George Jones. And the DJ said, I heard this song the other day, and it's going to be number one. It'll probably be number one for this year and forever. And the music hit of He Stopped Loving Her Today. Now, to many in the media and many fans of country music who cover it, this is the greatest country song of all time. Technically, it is probably the top song of its genre in everything. There's aspects of blues, there's aspects of rock and roll, there's aspects of crying ballads, as we say. When you hear this song, if you were never a country fan or a fan of George Jones before this day, you were. This led to the country and western explosion of the 1980s of all the singer-songwriters, from Steve Earle to Rodney Crowell to Dwight Yoakam to Lyle Lovett, all those singers, and the female explosion as well. It put country back on the map for more than a decade. When I say country, I mean traditional country. Hank Williams, Lefty Frizzell, all the great singer-songwriters, Patsy Cline. Now, the song itself is probably one of the most saddest things you'll ever hear if you never heard it before. Now, this was recorded again by the Possum, George Jones, and released on April 14, 1980, but recorded in 79 for the I Am What I Am album, which I've talked about in the previous podcast. Now, it has been named in several surveys as the greatest country song of all time. Again, released in the spring of 1980 from that album. The song was also Jones' first solo number one single in 6 years. Written by the great team of Bobby Braddock and Curly Putnam. And the week after Jones's death, the song re-entered the Hot Country Songs chart at number 21. As of November of 2013, the single sold 521,000 copies in the States. Since 2008, it has been preserved by the Library of Congress International Recording Registry. The song was number 275 on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. Should be much higher, but no argument, at least it's there. Now, his great friend Alan Jackson sang the song during George Jones's funeral service on May 2nd, 2013. Now, Strait and Jackson sang the song as a tribute during the 2013 CMA Awards on November 6, 2013. That they were there because George and Alan were kind of his spiritual great-grandsons, you might say. Now, we have to set up the picture here. George was in bad shape by 1980. I had seen him in concert. I think it was in the winter of 1980. I seen him on the Ronnie Prophet show several times before this official release, and he was in bad shape. The drugs were catching up to him, the heartache, the drinking, being on the road, being manipulated by whoever was manipulating him. Now, like I said, Jones had not had a number one single in 6 years, and many critics, and there was a lot of them, began to write him off. However, the music industry was stunned in July when He Stopped Loving Her Today shot to number one on the country charts. Now, there was a song released in 79 called Someday My Day Would Come. That's sort of maybe the prequel to He Stopped Loving Her Today. There's a lot of parallels, and I might do a podcast just on that song. It's almost like a hymn for a drunk in a choir. He's saying, someday my day will come. But He Stopped Loving Her Today tells the story of a friend who has never given up on his soulmate or his love. He keeps old letters and photos from their previous romance and hangs on to hope that she would come back again. The song reaches peak in the chorus, revealing that he indeed stopped loving her when he died, and the woman does return for his funeral. Now, George plays the narrator of the piece, and there's a rap break, but there's like a narration break. George is basically telling the story of his friend. Now, producer Billy Sherrill introduced Jones to the song as early as 1978, but according to Sherrill and Jones himself, The possum hated the song when he first heard it. In Bob Allen's biography of the singer, Sherrill states he thought it was too long, too sad, too depressing, and that nobody would ever play it. He hated the melody and wouldn't learn it. Sherrill also claims that Jones frustrated him by continually singing songs to the melody of Chris Christopherson's hit, Help Me Make It Through the Night. In the Same Old Me retrospective, Sherrill recalls a heated exchange during one recording session. I said, "That's not the melody." And he said, "Yeah, but it's a better melody." He said, "It might be. Christopherson would think so. It's his melody." Now, Sherrill claims that Jones was such a bad physical shape during this period that a recitation was recorded 18 months after first was, and added that the last word Jones said about "he stopped loving her today" was "nobly by that morbid son of a bitch." Although he had disliked "He Stopped Loving Her Today" when it first offered him, Jones ultimately gave the song credit for reviving his flagging career, stating that a 4-decade career has been salvaged by a 3-minute song. It was such a tour de force for the producer as for the singer, featuring all the hallmarks of Sherrill's symphonic approach to country production. It featured cresting strings and dramatic flourishes. Had it not been for Sherrill, it is unlikely the song would have ever been recorded. Such was the belief in the song, although he did share some of Jones' misgivings initially. In his 1996 memoir, Jones recalled, "Putnam and Braddock killed the song's main character too soon in the early versions. Billy kept telling him to kill the guy at a different time and then have the woman come to his funeral. He gave the song to me and I carried it for more than a year, also convinced that it needed rewriting. Billy had a notebook about an inch thick that was nothing but rewrites for He Stopped Loving Her Today." Now, the song is basically, they're at the funeral. He's basically describing the guy's life, almost like in a narration, like a eulogy. And she arrives, and then he says, in his own mind, I think, or he's telling the story later on. So it changes pace, it changes timing. It's almost like you're at the funeral, he sees the girl, and he ends it by later on telling what he saw. And it's very, very dramatic. It's almost like a play in a 3-minute version. I think the best version is 3:21. Now, the success of He Stopped Loving Her Today led CBS Records to renew Jones' recording contract and sparked new interest in the singer. He won the Grammy for Best Vocal Performance in 1980, and the Academy of Country Music awarded the song Single of the Year and Song of the Year in 1980. It also became the Country Association Song of the Year in both 80 and 81. Now, the song became so synonymous with Jones that few singers dared to cover it. Jones recorded the song again with producer Keith Stegall for the 2005 album Hits I Missed and One I Didn't. A recording of Johnny Cash performing the song is featured on the 2003 collection Unearthed, and Trent Sumner and New Row Mob recorded it on the 2006 Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. Now, Alan Jackson again did a really beautiful version, and I can't talk about it without crying, that's all I can say. Now, what a group that played on the single. Yeah, George, of course, in the lead. The Jordanaires, who gave a great performance of backing vocals. Millie Kirkham as well, backing vocals. Pig Robbins on piano. Pete Drake on pedal steel. Charlie McCoy on harmonica. Jerry Kerrigan on drums. And the session players for acoustic and electric guitars, bass, strings. I think there was at least 11 instruments on the single. And again, anyway, Billy Sherrill, of course, producer, Lou Bradley, engineer, and Ron Snake Reynolds as engineer. Now, the 80 charts, U.S. Country Songs, Billboard #1, and for some reason, even though it was probably the most popular song and album in the Maritimes by George Jones ever, it only reached #2 on the Canadian RPM charts. And in the U.S. Hot Country Songs in 2013, #21. And the year-end charts, it was #3 on the U.S. Country Songs on Billboard for 1980. Now, it should come with a disclaimer. If you're going to listen to the song, if you've gone through a heartache, or one of your buddies has just died, and the woman that left him for someone richer and handsomer with a better truck, I've never heard the song played at a funeral. If it is, I don't know how I could respond to that. This is a song you don't play unless you're willing to survive the emotions that come back. For me, every time I hear the song, I think of the early 80s in northern New Brunswick, where George was the king of country. And, you know, the summer of 1980, there was a lot of heat, a lot of new jobs. Poverty was starting to lift in northern New Brunswick. People were working. Like the dirty 70s was pretty well done. It's for us, it's an emotion of the time of 41 years ago. At the time, I was just a teenager, getting ready for high school, journalism, college, whatever. But hearing that song, the whole album really stood out because in my home communities, you go up the road and the album would start, and then obviously the next song, it will follow house by house. Everybody had that album back then. Similar to Saturday Night Fever, similar to Sgt. Pepper's. I think George Jones for 6 months in the spring and summer of 1980 was the #1 artist of all North America because the comeback. And when he sang it at the awards, and there was sort of like a similar comparison when Choices came out, where basically Choices is the kind of cousin to He Stopped Loving Her Today. And I'm not ready yet as well. But Bartender's Blues was also a cousin. Anything George sings about heartache, women, liquor, you know, she's never coming back because I broke her heart, or songs like that. He never sang that. She's never come her heart. We really don't know why she left. We're not sure if he did it. We're not sure if she did it. We're not sure if he laid a hand on her or she basically fucked off. Who knows? But it's yet to be known. I'd like to see a movie theater or movie company take up a He Stopped Loving Her Today, either movie or short film. I'd like to see it put together. And I have the scenario in my head. It's kind of a cold day and everybody's in the front and the music plays and everybody in the crowd is reacting to the song a different way. The people that loved the character of the piece are crying, but the people that hated him, like I said, maybe broke the woman's heart, who knows, and then she shows up and everybody turns around and looks at her. You know, you know when your journalist things pass through your mind. Anyway, that's a story of George Jones, He Stopped Loving Her Today. If you like what we're doing here with our vintage entertainment podcast, let us know with a like, comment, or subscribe. We thank you for the support. And don't forget, George Jones the Possum. Only one person, besides maybe two, Hank and Elvis and George, reflected something that can't be described. You hear George Jones' song, you feel it. You feel it in your heart, your soul. I've ached for people before. Let me tell you something. I feel George's pain because George went through a lot. Thanks for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Bye.